Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Crime Centric. This being a show where I talk about crime dramas that I watch. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about the latest episode of Coroner. A lot of really interesting things went down in this episode, so let's break it down. Well, first and foremost, let's kind of talk about the crux of the case. At the center of this, Jenny's investigating what seems like an overdose, but there's not enough drugs in the system for it to be like an overdose situation, but there's no like visible markers like what could have happened. There's no strangulation, no blunt force trauma, so it's like, what happened to this guy? And they end up finding out his name is Trent. He does have this particular mark on his arm. It's like a swirl, but it's like a burn mark. It wasn't like a tattoo, and it's like someone like it was someone branded him with it. So they ultimately end up finding out. It actually ties into the case that the O'Shea case that Clark was having Jenny look into last episode, wasn't it? Last episode. And so it's coming full circle now because it's like, it turns out she had the same marking too. Because basically she was going through like, trying to go to meetings and stuff like that because she was dealing with her own, like she was sober herself. So they end up like finding out like, well, she's a part of this, and now someone else that potentially is part of this, kind of almost like an AA group, ended up dead as well. So they go, which later on Jenny kind of got chewed out. Well, her and Clark, but mainly her. It's like, right, you came here under false pretenses, which I'm like, did she really? Because like they kind of showed up there. They didn't like necessarily participate until like you're like, oh, you guys want to say anything? It's like, no, they were kind of in the back. But I guess I get it. It's like, right, this is supposed to be a safe space. Like no one should feel like they got any judgment. And it's like, you guys are kind of cops. I mean, he's a crown attorney, but she's like a coroner, so it's not the same, but still I get it. But I was also like, she seemed like very respectful, because it's like, if she was like pretending to be amongst you, that'd be pretenses. But it's like, no, she was just sitting in the background. But I guess it's like you being in the background making us think like, oh, you're just other people here with your own. I mean, to be fair, Jenny's got her own issues. It's just not drug related, or like it's not a vice related situation for her. It's like, obviously she got her personal demons, which everyone does, but like she just doesn't have the vice situation that everyone else has when it comes to like dealing with things. But what ended up being the interesting thing about this case too was like finally finding out like that the person that the dude Trent that died, he was suffering from dehydration. And so now it kind of makes you look back at all the other cases a little differently about like what necessarily went wrong. And so it turns out the main dude running the case, Mason, was basically, because there was also like magic mushrooms was actually in the people's system. So it's obviously something you can, I don't know if you could overdose on magic mushrooms or something like that. I mean, maybe you could. But it turns out like Mason it was like an extreme detox of getting people high on like magic mushrooms and then having them stay in a sauna for a long period of time. It was basically the most extreme version of a detox, and it's his way of helping people. But sadly, like, Waylane, Trent, and now also that other lady who had opened up at the meeting that Jenny tried to talk to, she almost died at the end because Mason, the others, he didn't intend to kill her. He was trying to because like she had confronted him because he's like, yeah, I'm just trying to help people. And then like she came here because you got it in her head that like I'm responsible. He's like, I'm not trying to do anything to hurt people. It's just that, he thought he was doing something right. And his means of doing it ended up getting people killed because the brand is supposed to be like, right, when you're like, before you get started, like your sobriety, like he kind of marks you. I guess it's kind of like the beginning of like everything happening for you. So it's sad, like he had the best of intentions, but he went about it the wrong way. And he did what he did. He disposed of the bodies, and he did, like an innocent man went to jail. O'Shea went to jail because of Wayland's believed murder. So like he kind of got away with it. And it seems like he didn't learn from that because he tried it again with Trent. So there was like, I think they talked about later on, there were 3 bodies, 3 murders that, so like, I think there was another person that was tied to like the deaths as well. So like she would have been like, but it's like he knew the risk of it. But I guess it's like in his mind, yeah, there might be some people that died from it, and it's an accident. But the fact is, you kept going after knowing people died from it. Made you go couldn't help but go like, yeah, but it's like, but I guess in his mind, it's like it was so successful. It does help. I am helping. So what if a few eggs get cracked along the way, type of thing. That's why it like kind of takes away a little bit from your like, oh, I don't mean to hurt anyone. It's like, yeah, you might not have, but you still kept going regardless, knowing that people died from you doing this. But so that was kind of an interesting development. Kind of tied to the case, well, not just kind of directly tied to the case, is working with Mike. I mean, I don't know why I keep calling Mike Clark, which I even love. Like before she met with him at the beginning of the episode, she put on lipstick. I was like, what is she? I was like, wait, oh, okay. And even Clark being like, whoa, something about you looks a little different. I was like, okay, Jenny, I see you. And it's like, yeah, let's work together on this and stuff like that. When it's all said and done, though, it's like, oh yeah, let's get together sometime, because they were able to clear O'Shea the murder he was accused of, and Clark's like, I'm gonna do whatever I can to get you exonerated and get you out. Because for him, it's like, right, I'm the one that got you locked up in the first place. It's only right that I, get you out. But him and Jenny, it's like, oh, let's go out. And I was like, oh, I thought just dinner or something. It's like, oh no, they're going to a rage room. That was interesting. You just go in there, you smash stuff to kind of let go of some stuff. And obviously for Jenny, it's like, oh yeah, she has a lot of rage herself. There's obviously a lot she's kind of dealing with, and I'm sure, like, as a Crown attorney, I'm sure there's like a lot Clark has on his plate. Which I was thinking this while I was watching that scene too. I'm like, I cannot like anytime I see something like that, I can't help but think of the song "The Lines" by Beartooth. Their music video is basically them smashing stuff like that, and there's a lot of slow motion in it, so it just immediately makes me think of that. It might not, that the band as well as the song might not be everyone's cup of tea, because they're kind of like a metalcore band. So if that's not your cup of tea, you might not like it. But I mean, if it's not your type of music, maybe you just enjoy the music video just for the fact that they're just smashing a whole bunch of stuff, and a lot of it's in slow motion. But my mind will always kind of go back to that, just because like I love the band, and I love that song in particular. But regardless. But then I'm also kind of like bang it out there too, which I was immediately like, in the back of my mind, I'm like, shouldn't you be careful? I was like, well, man, most of the shards of broken stuff is going to be on the ground. So I'm like, as long as you're wearing your shoes, I guess you're fine. But then like they're banging it out on the table. I'm like, you might want to be careful about that. I mean, it's like, I guess like you made doubly sure, but it's just kind of funny to think about, like, oh, you have to clear off the table. Like, okay, all the shards gone. Okay, let's bang it out. But it's like, cause they started against the wall, but I was like, yo, okay. I mean, to be fair, it makes sense. Cause I think for Jenny, it's like, right, this is her way of kind of moving on. Cause like, well, things played out the way they did with Liam, and now it's like, I think she's ready to kind of take those steps forward. I did appreciate though, like obviously like the dog statue came up, and she was like, no, wait. He's like, I want to take you for a dog person. Jenny just wanted to smash it herself, obviously significant to her, but I was like, right, kind of a little therapeutic in more ways than one. Even though that hasn't been a thing for a while, it's still symbolic of just like smashing and letting go of the past and just what that represented, So I think that's dope in its own right. But other aspects of this episode, because Jenny is also dealing with the aftermath of the last episode with the whole Ross situation. Like, Ross is like, oh yeah, I'm okay. I'm just going to meet with a friend and stuff like that. And just like Jenny doesn't know how to really approach it. I think it's also because like she has her own stuff she's dealing with too, but that like obviously she loves Ross, and it's like she wants to help, but it's just like, right, like how do I even approach him about that? He just keeps saying he's okay, even though like, what he experienced last episode could have been a traumatic thing, but still. Something I should also point out too, obviously, once again, these already aired in Canada on the channel. I think the channel called CBC. I wonder, is that just like Canada Broadcasting Channel or something like that? Maybe not. Maybe there's something. That's just my ignorant assumption. Like it might be something else. But I saw a picture last episode when I was like looking for thumbnails for last week's episode, and it was an image from something that wasn't in the episode, so I'm like, is that just promotional material, or is that something that was actually cut out of the episode? Because it looked like it was a scene from the episode that just didn't air, and I'm like, well, because I'm curious, like, because I know these obviously are edited, because obviously they edit out on the swear words and stuff like that, but I'm like, do they actually edit the episodes? Because like I don't know if these like in the original airings are a little bit longer. So like for network television here in the States, timing wise, they cut those up. Because I know they do it with like they did it with Stargirl season 1. If you're unaware, the DC Universe versions of those episodes are longer than their CW counterparts. It aired on like Monday. On DC Universe, and then Tuesday it aired on the CW, but it'd be like a couple minutes shorter. Just like Superman and Lois recently, you could only get the extended cut of those episodes on the CW app. Like on TV, it's just the regular version that aired. Like, so that's why I'm like, I'd assume like they edited though. Like, I don't know. I think it's nothing too significant to the state of the episode, but it just seemed like this particular scene that I was kind of seeing, I'm like, it felt like it added a little more context to the episode in certain regards when it came to like Ross's like why he was like who he was trying to protect and stuff like that. That's why I'm like, it didn't destroy the episode or anything, but I think like that's why like I kind of had like questions that weren't answered, and I think that might be why. Do let me know in the comments down below, because I'm curious, is there anyone from Canada who's seen the or just in general, someone who's had access to the Canadian version, like the original versions of these episodes, and I was like, oh yeah, like they definitely have cut stuff, like in certain regards. Like I've just never really noticed it till now. Like that was just the first time I've ever really noticed that. So I mean, it's probably been happening the entire time. I just never noticed. Maybe it's only a few episodes here and there. Maybe most of them stay completely intact. I don't know. Regardless, because I know they tried to like probably cut scenes that aren't, like I said, too important to the episode. They add more context in certain regards, but not enough to like, without this scene, the episode, like, you know, like some stuff, I guess it's considered like, it can be it could be on a cutting room floor type of situation. But once again, tensions and all that aside. Aside from everything else, getting back to it, McAvoy taking a day off. I thought he was taking a day off relating to like his back situation. It's like, no, he's hanging out with, I don't know if he consider her his new girlfriend. Or like, I don't know if they, I mean, she seems like a very free-spirited person. She's an artist and everything. And she even talks about it later on, because there's a whole conversation about like, oh, kids and stuff like that. It's like, you know, he's very married to his job, but does he ever want kids? And he asked her the same, which for her, it's like, she's always enjoyed her life the way she likes kids, but there's always conveniences for like the way she lives her life. She makes enough money to kind of live off of her art, but also just kind of go with the flow of things. Because there's also the conversation for McAvoy about, like, has he decided anything about his surgery? For him, it's like, I could put it off. I don't need to worry about it because, like, yeah, I'm actually feeling good, like, for the first time in a long time. But for her, it's like, you literally have, like, a hole in your spine. But he's so scared that, like, if he gets to surgery, there's a chance that he might get paralyzed. I'm also worried, though, the longer he waits, the worse it's going to be. That, like, maybe, like, the longer he waits, like, things could escalate, and his chances of getting, like, the surgery going wrong and potentially paralyzing him could get worse, because the hole in his spine could be, like, getting bigger and bigger for all we know. So she tries to, like, talk him into that a little bit, but without forcing his hand. They did roller skate around, which was pretty dope, which I was like, it made me remember something I completely forgot about. Like, I was like, yeah, my hometown, well, at least, like, near my hometown and stuff, there used to be, like, a roller skating rink. I haven't been home in years. Like, it's been a couple years. The last time I was home, it was for, like, a quick drop by, but I wasn't, like, home, and haven't been home in, like, since, like, 2013, 2014, interestingly enough, and it was kind of under depressing circumstances. But it just made me think about, I was like, man, I was never big into roller skating, but I'm like, right, it just made me think about it. It's like, I haven't like been in that general area of like roller skating since I was a little kid in like elementary school. It just hit me, because I was like, man, I hadn't thought about that in years. I was like, yeah, that was a thing. Like, it's just one of those things of like, until like the synapses in your head fire, and you're like, I never remember that. I'm sorry, I'm going on a huge tangent, but I was like, that just hit me in the like nostalgia zone, because I was like, man, I actually hadn't thought about that in years, you know? We do see at the end, though, like, obviously, like, McAvoy's going to his car, but then, like, his back, like, hurts, and he has to take some pills, and I'm like, ugh. Because him and, her had gotten, like, fortune cookies earlier, which I'm, like, is that a real thing of, like, right, like, is it kind of like, well, if you make a birthday wish, like, you're not supposed to tell anybody, you're not supposed to say it out loud, just say it in your head so it can come true. But is that true about fortune cookies? Like, oh, like, you have to do it in private, because if you're around someone, it's not going to come true. I might actually try that from now on. I haven't had fortune cookie in like forever anyway, but still. But it was basically telling him if you want to basically make it to spring, you have to like survive winter or something like that. It's like, right, like you won't make it at this rate. Like it's going to be a lot worse. So it's like kind of telling him to kind of take the plunge obviously like you can, obviously it's meant to be kind of like something you can interpret, but it's still like, yeah, like just take the plunge on his surgery. I know you're scared, but he's going to need to. So we'll see where things kind of go on that front. Because I thought when he was chasing after Mason, I was like, oh, that's going to get bad. Like I thought like running after Mason and Mason's going to try and fight him back and like it would worsen his injury or something. Like I was scared something like that would happen, but it's like, no, like it turned out not to be the case. So luckily that all worked out. But other than that, there's the Liam side of things, him leaving the ranch or whatever area that he was working at. I guess things between him and that lady didn't work out. He's like, he wanted things to, but obviously he has to leave to kind of figure things out. It's like a fresh new start for him. So it's kind of sad too, because it's like, right, he ended things between, like, he didn't like restart things between him and Jenny, because it's like, right, me and her are going out and this is kind of where I am right now in my life. And so he's dropping off Eloise to like the people who are the new owners. But along the way, Eloise is kind of like freaking out because he's like, right, he's kind of a little lost. And obviously like, he starts kind of getting a little PTSD, and he's just like, no, you're lost. Everybody gets lost. It's fine. There was some alcohol. He didn't crack it open at the time, but that's also one of those things I'm like, did they cut out that part of the episode? Because all of a sudden we hard cut to him having the accident already. Not unless I missed something, like, because I did step away from the TV a couple times. I didn't pause it, like, while the ads were playing, because I was watching on the CW app. I'm like, I don't think I missed anything. So it's like, just all of a sudden the scene cuts back to like him having an accident. I was like, was he drinking or something? Was he caught up in his head? Because later on he's picking up the bottle, which is broken, but it didn't look like the top was off of it. Maybe it was. I don't know. That's why I'm like, did something like get cut? Did he have like a moment they just felt like we should probably cut it? Maybe there was something too, like a little too violent for maybe the CW for whatever reason that they had to cut it. I don't know. But just, maybe it's supposed to be ambiguous about what happened. Maybe at the core it doesn't really matter. It's all a symptom of the same thing, whether it was him drinking, whether it was him having an episode. Like, it's all connected regardless of what it was. And so he's taking care of Eloise had gotten away, and so injured, blood from his head, his leg being messed up. He chases after Eloise and ends up kind of patching her up a little bit because she got wounded because of him. And so as he's like trying to get the truck started, and he ultimately is, as he's walking, he winces because he feels his side, and I'm like, wow, I guess he just never noticed it. I guess the adrenaline was pumping so much, like, yeah, he, like, the obvious other pain was fine, but this, I guess he just never noticed it. He was so focused on trying to get Eloise back, because almost like, I guess, like, because, like, the horse is his responsibility, and also the horse is this horse in particular has always been a mirror, so it's almost like her being lost and out there alone and scared. It was a little reflective of himself, like, on some psyche level, so I think there's some parallels that can be drawn there. But, like, him pulling that shard of glass, I was like, and the moment it started bleeding bad, I was like, that's not good. Because I'm like, under those circumstances, I'm like, is it better to leave it in? Because you never, like, some injuries, it's like better to leave something in, because, like, unless you have a way of completely treating the wound, but luckily he was able to take Eloise to their new owner, and everything ended up being copacetic. But I think it did kind of get because he wishes that he could be there for her as, her next stage in life, because Eloise is in a new place. She's in a good place, but, Liam is still trying to find his way back to some form of normalcy, which leads us to the end of the episode where he shows up at Jenny's place, and it's just hi, and it's like kind of a worst time considering, like, her and Clark, and now you're showing up just now, and it's like, well, to be fair, Jenny kind of did the same thing, so for it to kind of be on the opposite end like that, I don't know if Liam's going to be like, oh, we should start a relationship, or just whether he just, wants to talk about, like, right, like, why I kind of pushed you away. Like, I'm fascinated to hear what that conversation is going to be, and just where all of this is going to take us going forward. There's 3 episodes left this season. I believe I was looking up, there's 10 episodes in this season. which I thought was kind of interesting considering like seasons 1 and 2 were both 8 episodes. But regardless, I'm interested to see where the next episode takes us with all of this. But really, that's all I want to talk about. Till the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day, and goodbye.